Harvey Specter is not the heart of Suits. Louis Litt is. That's the argument I'm making, and I'm not hedging it. The man everyone laughed at, dismissed, and wrote off as the firm's insecure comic relief antagonist ends the series with his name first on the wall. The woman he loved for years, a daughter, and the most complete character arc the show ever gave anyone. While Harvey chased perfection and Mike chased legitimacy, Louis Litt chased something harder, becoming a person who could finally live with himself. And he got there. Here's exactly how the most underrated character in Suits earned that title. When Suits opens, Louis Litt is already losing the comparison that matters most to him. He is a senior figure, Pearson Hardman, who oversees the associates and dominates the firm's financial work. But Harvey Specter has just been promoted to senior partner ahead of him. Louis has the expertise, the workload, and the institutional knowledge. Harvey has the title, the spotlight, and the effortless confidence Louis cannot stop measuring himself against. That gap is the wound the entire series keeps pressing on. You know the version of Louis the show sells early. The guy who screams, "You're gonna get lit up," like it's a battle cry and means every syllable. The one who, in Season 3, Episode 2, "I Want You to Want Me," bakes a full welcome to Team Louis cake because he genuinely believes Mike Ross might leave Harvey and come work under him. He presents that cake with a kind of hope that is almost painful to watch. Then Mike goes back to Harvey, and Louis quietly throws the cake away. No big speech, just the quiet disposal of a moment that mattered to him more than he could admit. The man will spend an entire episode in Season 3, Episode 7, "She's Mine," fighting Nigel for custody of a cat named Mikado that isn't even his. He writes letters to that cat. He takes the custody battle seriously. That is not a bit. That is Louis Litt showing you, without saying it, how starved he is for something that will stay. But that surface is the trap. Underneath the rage and the insecurity sits a character who wants, more than anything, to be seen as worthy by the people he respects. Harvey, Jessica, even Mike. Eventually, the show spends 9 seasons putting that need through a meat grinder. Louis fails, overreaches, gets humiliated, betrays people, gets betrayed, has a heart attack in open court, resigns in shame, blackmails his way back, goes to therapy, gets mugged at gunpoint, and still keeps showing up. This is not a story about a side character getting occasional funny lines. This is the story of the only person in the building who had to earn every single piece of respect he ever received. By the end, the firm is Litt Wheeler Williams Bennett. Harvey is gone. Mike is in Seattle. And Louis Litt is the one still standing with everything he always said he wanted. We're going to walk the exact path that turned the firm's punching bag into its most complete character. The first real crack in the Louis's villain armor is how desperately he wants a friend. Watch the early seasons carefully. Louis doesn't just want power. He wants belonging. When he thinks Mike might leave Harvey for him, he doesn't just offer a better caseload. He bakes that cake. The gesture is so sincere, it almost hurts. Mike rejects it, of course, because the show still needs Louis as the obstacle. But the moment lands harder than any of Harvey's one-liners. This is a man who will intimidate every associate in the building and then turn around and quietly patch Mike up after Tessa's husband beats him, because no one else is doing it. He doesn't soften his voice. He doesn't ask how Mike feels. He just treats the wounds. Care for Louis has always been practical before it is tender. Louis runs the associates like a drill sergeant because that is the only language he knows for care. He loads them with work, screams at them, ranks them, and somehow still expects loyalty. When the firm ranks second to last in a New York survey of quality of life for new associates and Harvard threatens to restrict recruiting access, Louis takes it personally. He doesn't just want to be feared. He wants the firm's name to mean something, and he wants to be the reason it does. He will do almost anything to fix that ranking because, in his mind, the ranking is a public judgment of him. Harvey never has to fight for that kind of recognition. Harvey walks into a room and the room rearranges itself. Louis has to scream, scheme, and still come up short. That gap is the engine of the character. Every time Louis tries to close it with underhanded tactics, the backstory leak of Harvey's strategy to Daniel Hardman just to get ahead the show punishes him. Every time he shows a flicker of genuine care, the audience feels it in a way the slicker characters never quite manage. The cake is the first time the show admits the truth out loud without saying it. Louis Litt is not the villain. He's the guy who was never taught how to ask for what he actually needs, so he tries to take it instead. Then the body betrays him. Season 3, Episode 14, Heartburn. Courtroom. Mid-argument. Louis clutches his chest and goes down. Minor heart attack. Hospital bed. The man who has spent years controlling every interaction suddenly cannot control his own heartbeat. Sheila Saz is there, and instead of resting, Lois is writing vows. She thinks he's working on a case. He looks up and proposes right there in the hospital room. That proposal is pure Louis Litt. Grand, impulsive, completely sincere, and still somehow about proving something to her, to himself, to the version of his life that keeps slipping away. Sheila accepts. For a moment, it looks like the man who has always come second might actually get the life he wants. Engagement, future, validation, the kind of soft landing he has never allowed himself to believe in. It collapses, of course. They realize they want different things, especially around children, and the engagement ends. Not a clean Sheila leaves. A mutual recognition that the futures they picture do not match. The heart attack becomes the first time the show forces Lois to confront the cost of his own intensity. He cannot rage his way through a failing body. He cannot scheme his way into a relationship that requires a softness he has not practiced. The hospital bed is the first time Lois looks small on purpose, and Rick Hoffman plays it without a single wink to the camera. No comic relief. No, you're gonna get lit up. Just a man realizing the armor is killing him from the inside. The real turning point is This Is Rome. Lois has already resigned after the Forceman embezzlement mess. He is out, humiliated, sitting in Harvey's dark office when Donna finds him. He holds up the Order of the Quash Key and starts explaining what it means like a man who has waited years to say it out loud. Highest academic honor. Skeleton key. Parchment. Metal. The kind of recognition that actually means something because you earned it the hard way, not because someone decided you looked the part. Mike walks in and does not recognize it. That is the moment the entire power structure of the show flips. Lois has spent years being lied to by the people he considered family. Harvey hired a fraud. Jessica covered it. Donna knew. And the one time Lois does something messy to stay in the game, they throw him to the wolves without the same protection they gave Mike. He confronts Donna and Jessica with pure, concentrated rage. Hoffman's performance in that scene is the best work anyone does on the show. No jokes, no soft underbelly. Just a man who has finally been given proof that the people he wanted to impress never trusted him enough to tell him the truth. He uses the secret, leverages Mike's fraud to demand name partner status. Pearson Specter Litt. The name on the wall he always wanted, acquired the ugliest way possible. For a stretch of episodes, Lois is the best antagonist the show ever had. He is not cartoonish. He is wounded and precise and willing to burn everything if that is what it takes to stop being the one left out of the room. Then the show does something rare. It lets the conflict evolve instead of freezing him as the villain. The full reconciliation with Mike does not happen overnight in This Is Rome. It develops later, through the confrontations that lead into fork in the road. Lois chooses to stay. The rage was always the armor around the need to belong. Once the armor cracks, the need is still there, but the tactics start to change. Watch what happens after the secret is out. Lois does not become soft overnight. He still has the temper. He still needs the validation. But the relationships start to rewire in ways the early seasons never allowed. Donna becomes his secretary after Norma dies, and, more important, becomes the first person who can call him on his nonsense without him exploding into the old performance. She does not treat him like a problem to be managed. She treats him like a person who was allowed to be difficult and still worth the effort. Katrina Bennett, the associate he once treated like a rival, becomes one of the most important professional relationships of his life. She is loyal to him in a way almost no one else ever was. She stays when it would be easier to leave. She sees the competence under the volume. Harvey and Lois begin the long, messy process of becoming something closer to friends. It is never clean. Harvey still throws him into a glass table during one of their fights. Lois still schemes when the old insecurity flares. But when Lois is later mugged at gunpoint in Season 8, Episode 4, Revenue Per Square Foot, the person he eventually opens up to is Harvey. The mugger puts a gun to the back of his head. Lois thinks he is going to die. He later tells Harvey, "I was mugged and I thought I was going to die. He had a gun pressed to the back of my head. I can still feel it." Harvey's response is simple and, for Harvey, almost gentle. "You're okay, buddy." That is the distance traveled. From leaking Harvey's strategy to Daniel Hardman in the backstory just to get ahead, to needing Harvey to hear the fear and not use it against him. Lois also starts seeing Dr. Stan Lipschitz regularly. The therapy is not a punchline, it is the work. Learning that the need for external validation is a trap that keeps him performing the same painful loop. The man who once measured his worth by whether Harvey or Jessica noticed him begins, slowly, to measure it by whether he can live with his own choices when no one is watching. The managing partner fight is the quiet coronation. Later seasons. The firm is fracturing under the rivalry between Samantha and Alex over the next name partner spot, along with broader leadership tensions under Robert Zane. Donna looks at Lois and helps push the truth into the open. He has to take control. Lois does not want it in the old way. He is not scheming for the title the way he once blackmailed his way into Pearson Specter Litt. He is the only one left who still believes the firm is worth saving as something more than a vehicle for ego. He runs. He wins. His first major move in Season 8, Episode 10, Managing Partner, is promoting both Samantha and Alex to name partner at the same time. That decision is pure late-stage Louis Litt. Not about consolidating power, about building something that can actually last. The same man who once made associates miserable for sport is now the one trying to stabilize the entire structure so the next generation does not inherit the same toxic competition that shaped him. When Harvey eventually leaves for Seattle, the firm becomes Litt Wheeler Williams Bennett. First name on the wall. Not because Lois blackmailed anyone this time, because he was the last one still willing to do the unglamorous work of holding it together when the flashier names decided they were done. And then there is Sheila. The relationship that started with a hospital bed proposal and heartburn ended when they wanted different futures reignited. Almost ended again when she was engaged to someone else in Season 7 and asked Lois for one last night before the wedding and finally landed. They get there the hard way. No clean montage. No sudden perfection. Just two people who keep choosing each other after every version of the relationship has already failed once. Married. Daughter named Lucy. The man who once measured every interaction by whether he was winning or losing finally gets a life that is not a competition. The firm is his. The family is his. The self-respect is, for the first time, something he generated instead of extracted from other people. That is the arc. Not a redemption that erases the earlier behavior. A transformation that makes the earlier behavior make sense, as the only tools a deeply insecure person had at the time. He did not become a different person. He became a person who no longer needed the old weapons. Here is the part most people still miss. By the series finale, Louis Litt has won the only game that actually mattered. Harvey gets the girl and the clean exit to Seattle to work with Mike. Mike gets legitimacy and Rachel and the moral high ground. Jessica leaves to build a new career in Chicago. Donna gets Harvey. Lois gets the firm with his name first. He gets the woman who saw him at his most broken hospital bed, rage, mugging trauma, all of it, and still chose him. He gets the child he always said he wanted, and he gets the one thing none of the others fully achieved, a version of himself he no longer has to apologize for. The show spends 9 seasons telling you Harvey is the closer, the best, the one who plays the man instead of the odds. But Harvey's arc is mostly about learning to let people in. Mike's is about becoming legal. Louis Litt's arc is about becoming whole. He starts as the person who will do anything for external proof that he matters. He ends as the person who no longer needs the proof because he finally built a life that does not require it. That is why the finale leaves Lois as a new father, while the firm he helped save continues without the 2 flashier names that used to define it. The most underrated character in Suits is the only one who finished the race with everything he actually needed. Not the coolest exits. Not the coolest exits. Not the most quotable power lines. The life. The reason Louis Litt stays underrated is simple. The show's marketing, the highlight reels, the best of, lists all lean on Harvey's suits and Mike's genius and the will they want they with Donna. Lois is the one who made people uncomfortable. He was too loud, too needy, too willing to be ugly on camera. Viewers who wanted slick power fantasies could dismiss him as comic relief and move on. But the people who stayed for the long haul know the truth. Every major emotional turn in the later seasons runs through Lois. The therapy with Lipschitz, the mugging trauma, and the way he finally says the fear out loud. The decision to stop measuring himself against Harvey even when the old reflex is still there. The quiet competence of actually running the place when everyone else is busy with their personal mythologies. Rick Hoffman never played Lois as a joke that got serious. He played a fully formed, deeply flawed human being who happened to be extremely funny when he was spiraling. That performance is the secret engine of the series. Remove Louis Litt and Suits becomes a stylish legal procedural with good banter and attractive people in expensive clothes. Keep him, and it becomes a 9-season study of what it costs to stop performing worthiness and start earning it the hard way. He did not get the coolest exits or the most quotable power lines. He got the life, the firm with his name first, the wife who stayed, the daughter, the self-respect that no longer depended on whether Harvey walked into the room and noticed him. That is the more interesting victory, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Every early you're going to get lit up, every thrown-away cake, every order of the coif key explanation, every hospital bed proposal.